Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Three Idiots Talk Aquariums podcast. Hope you've all had a good week. So today, the main topic is going to be about mistakes we've made while fish keeping. But thought quickly we'd just go around and maybe discuss some updates of stuff that's happened in our fish rooms or shops and that. So I don't know if you want to start first, other Cam, with anything interesting that might have happened to you. But yeah, away we go.
Cool. I got a whole bunch of honey gourami fry brought in by a customer later last week, which was kind of cool. So I think there's probably about 50 of the little fellas, which is quite neat. So it's quite
Nice.
cool seeing them swarming around and doing little honey gourami stuff. So it's kind of cool.
Are they the little like the sunset ones or the red one, the orange ones?
Sunset ones, sunsets.
Oh yeah, they're awesome. They were like
They
one of
are.
my first fish. That is like a special place in my heart. They're awesome. I love them.
I'm a huge fan. Like I never used to be a big fan of gouramis, but over the last few months, watching a couple of males develop their color and watching their behavior and stuff, I've become a massive fan of them. I think they're really awesome.
Yeah,
And they're
they're real
also
fun.
they're quite hardy and they're good for small tanks, so
Yep.
they're a good one.
And you don't sacrifice anything color wise.
Yeah, and they're cheap. Like for what they are, I think they're a fantastic little fish, and they're a good little centerpiece for, like I said, someone with a smaller tank or someone sort of more novice in the hobby. I think they've got a lot going for them.
Do you have any? Do you have any up here, Cam?
Not at the moment. Often I do, but I don't think I've any on hand right now.
It'd be a good one for that classroom tank. A feature fish for that classroom tank. Now you say it.
Let me know. I'll hit up other Cam and get some up for you.
I want one.
But I used to have a trio ages ago, and whenever I walked, it was in a rimless tank with no lid, and whenever I walked past, it always spit water at me, trying to get me to feed them. Like,
that's pretty cool.
It's just so awesome. Like, you get that kind of interaction and stuff without having to get, your big Oscars and flower horns and all this big stuff. You just get it all in the tiny little package that's all bright and colourful in that.
Yeah, they're a cool little fish.
So yeah, I love them. Yeah, man. Yeah. What have you had going on, Ryan?
I'd just say business as usual in my fish room at the moment.
Exciting times, eh?
No exciting updates, just ticking along, feeding the fish.
Well, that's always good.
Yeah,
that's good.
It's good
for a fish room like that. It's good to avoid anything notable happening, I think.
You don't really want, unless it's cool stuff breeding, you just want things to tick along.
Yeah, makes sense.
And with me not being retail, they don't really need to make any big moves. So I'm just, things breeding, things growing, good.
Things growing. You got a big Anubias growing?
Oh yeah, Anubias maximus is in there still.
Good to hear. Well, for me, I've not had anything too exciting, except I had a whole bunch of Africans come in from our friend Dex on Sunday, I think it was. So that was real cool. They've been selling stupid well. So by the time you listen to this podcast, I don't think there'll be much left. But some real awesome stuff. I got a strigatus that's actually got some color. Because if any of you have been following my Facebook updates and stuff, I have a strigatus that is getting some pretty good size and is as grey as the night is black. So that's boring. But I got one that's actually got some color, and it's probably only like, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 centimeters or something like that. So like not massive. So that's pretty awesome. Then I got some banshees that always are a little bit yellowfish for some reason, always hard to find because everyone wants them basically. So yeah, that's about the only exciting thing that's happened. Yeah, they're awesome. I was really wanting to keep one, but they all sold out. Well, I think there's one left, but they all sold too fast for me to pull one out and keep it. But they're one that everyone seems to want.
That might have been the first peacock that I saw in full blaze color when I first got into the hobby.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, from memory.
That's a good one to get you going.
Yeah, yes. Really nice peacock.
The only frustrating thing was seeing them is you go, oh, I want that, and then you start trying to find it and you can't.
Exactly.
They were a bit more abundant, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, whatever.
Back when I was a baby, eh?
Shut up.
All right. So, so as I mentioned before, today's sort of main topic is mistakes we've made in the hobby, or maybe for Cam and I more in the business side of things, or maybe more in the personal side of things, all that kind of thing. So I thought it'd be a bit of fun, and hopefully it'll prevent some of you guys from making the same mistakes in the future, which obviously is gonna be helpful. So I don't know if you want to start less cool, Cam, but yeah.
Cool. I can start with something.
Sure thing.
I feel like we might end up going around the room and sharing a few stories. So we'll start with a non-fatal one to start with.
That's always good.
I was ridiculously hungover one Sunday morning, and I thought it was a really, probably borderlining still drunk to be totally fair. And I thought it was a really good idea to set up a new aquarium. So into what was my fish room at the time, which was just the spare room of my house, I put a 3-foot tank, just a standard glass box, chucked it on a desk with drawers and all that kind of stuff. This is when I was really, really, really into the hobby. Chucked it in there, put some white gravel similar to the fruit salad type size, just chucked that in there, poked a few plants in there, got the garden hose, filled it up, everything was going good. I was like, really hungover, really need some KFC. So I went out to KFC, came back, and because I didn't put any polystyrene under the tank, the bottom of it cracked from corner to corner, and there was a couple hundred litres of water just on the floor of my spare room. What do I do? So I sat there and ate my KFC before I dealt with it. It wasn't getting anywhere. It wasn't getting anywhere, and there was no fish in there.
I suppose you can't argue with that.
The positive thing of this story is, and what I've heard is, you got KFC, and a day when you get KFC is never a bad day in my books. I'm a big fan of the Dirty Bird.
Yeah.
I don't know. Would you trade a tank for a bucket? That's the real question.
Well, the crack tank, absolutely, because I don't need it anymore.
Yeah, fair enough. Can't argue with that.
Well, and I wonder if the best payoff is, hopefully you save some for your missus so that she's not so angry as well. Because I'm sure she'll be like, "Hey, you flooded the house, but I got KFC, so it's okay. Don't stress. Don't worry about it. You're stupid fish. I don't even care."
I was single at the time, so it didn't matter. But that would have been a good option. Yeah.
If KFC is listening to this podcast, we don't have any sponsors, so hit us up. I could do with a free bucket every now and then.
Yeah. Do we get to sit in the cool shack at the cricket? If we get sponsored.
Oh, I hope so. They could do with a fish tank up there.
Yeah.
I reckon.
I haven't set up a tank without polystyrene under it ever since, so that was a massive learning for me.
What do you think about the whole the yoga mat movement going on at the moment, as opposed to the polystyrene?
I'm a big fan.
You're not a fan?
I'm a big fan.
I'm using mats under all of the stuff in the shop.
All my tanks have got them too. Yeah.
I'm not a fan for big tanks. I'm a fan for little tanks. I think it looks so much better, like on a little tank.
Just get a little black one.
Yeah, and you never see it. It looks so much better. But for like big tanks, I don't think it's thick enough. Like it'll compress down to like a few mils at the most. Like I don't know, maybe 4 foot plus. It would be too small, too thin. But
you could argue that even in a big tank, it shouldn't be compressing that much. Like your stand should be flat and level.
No, but I mean just like uniformly, because it's more squishy than polystyrene. So like just the weight squishes it down.
It might squash too much.
Yeah, so it's like almost it's almost not there. Just from the weight of like the glass and the water and stuff, it uniformly squishes down, whereas the polystyrene doesn't as much, so it can absorb more. Obviously, you want your stand to be level and flat.
level,
but
and nothing
you know,
sticking out of it.
the reason you're putting it there is to in case it's not. So that's kind of what I think. I did have it under my 5-foot tank. I should have kept it. I had it under my 5-foot tank where it was previously set up, and like when we took it off, it would have been like uniformly the whole thing would have been like maybe 2 or 3 mils at the most.
Thickness of a bit of cardboard.
Yeah, because it was there for like years, so it's like squashed down so tight. And now I put polystyrene under it, and it's probably compressed a little bit, but not enough to be noticeable really yet. So that's the only thing I would say. But yeah, for a little tank, I think it looks so much better. Like polystyrene looks terrible. So you get a little tank, chuck it on, and you'll never see it again.
And came up for the win.
Yeah, man. What are they? $12 something?
Yeah, cheap.
I get massive rolls from Mitre 10, I think it is. Their non-slip floor mat type stuff. Like the ginormous. Just cut them into strips or cut them into pieces as you needed. Probably works out about the same price as Kmart stuff.
I thought you'd be more the pay someone else to do it type.
Almost. That's one thing I can do. I can use a craft knife, and I can.
I thought you'd be scissors. You're pushing a boat out, with the craft knife.
The good thing is with being inbred is he's probably got extra fingers anyway. So like if he's using a knife, he can afford to lose a couple of digits, and he'll still be then he must be reduced to a normal person. You know,
so you're from different islands. I'm not inbred.
You know,
it's a win-win situation.
Yeah. So the best possible outcome is that he's going to do well, you know. And if it's underneath fish tank, it doesn't matter if he cuts it crooked, you know. Like it's all good.
No one's going to see it.
Well, I've got tiny little strips of it in my room because I didn't put anything under the tanks. They're only supported front and back, so you know.
Don't put that on Facebook. You'll get demolished.
It's been done in fish rooms all over the world for many years with no issue, so I'm sure it'll be fine.
I only do the edge because all the tanks in the shop and actually out the back, none of them have got support underneath, and they only do the edges as well because there's nothing underneath to carry them. So
yeah, my ones at the shop are the same.
Yeah.
I just put polystyrene under the whole lot because. Honestly, because I couldn't be bothered cutting them, trying to wiggle it all in, but it only touches on the edges basically. So yeah, because the glass doesn't bow, so you know, it doesn't really matter either way. Yeah, well, if the glass bows, you've got bigger problems going on.
Yeah, it doesn't bow, it breaks.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hopefully it doesn't break, but you know, that's a question for another topic that I feel like we might be getting to later in the podcast.
Does glass bend?
What?
No. Is that what you want to know?
I have no idea. I'm lost. What's your next big mistake, Ryan, that you've committed over your many years in the hobby?
I have many mistakes. Probably the most
living in Helensville.
The most amusing mistake that I ever had was I don't regret. It's not a mistake living in Helensville. I own a house. YOLO.
Yeah. Oh. Big flex.
And I had avocado this morning, and I own a house. So yeah, what you gonna do? You know.
Cry.
So what am I thinking? I was thinking I've made heaps of mistakes. One mistake that I made was I decided because the fish room was a warm place, I'd brew beer in it. So I had this brewing barrel in the middle of my fish room. And one day I don't know what happened, but I must have bumped the tap on the brew barrel and it was pouring beer onto the ground. And the next time I went in there, because obviously the fish room's a contained place, like the air comes from within the fish room. And I don't know if it was something to do with like the CO2 in the beer or something, but all the fish were like gasping on the surface and like stuffed from or maybe they got too drunk. I don't know. But so the beer pouring on the floor did something to the air in the room, and I actually did lose a couple of fish out of that, mainly like Calvis and stuff like that, the real sensitive ones, or the ones that need lots of oxygen.
Oh damn!
And Tanganekins and stuff like that. But yeah, that beer, I still closed the tap and drank it, and it was nice beer. But it was an expensive mistake. So along the lines of spilling stuff and drinking, I will I'll start off with that.
That's interesting. I wouldn't have thought that would have any impact on the fish as long as it didn't like go in the tanks and that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I still don't know what happened, but that's the only thing that changed.
Was your air pump inside the room?
Yeah.
Because it could well have been drawing in the fumes and pushing it through into the tank, whatever.
And it was partially
condensating.
It was fermenting beer too. Like it wasn't it wasn't just like a bottle of beer. It was still going through the fermentation process with the yeast and all that sort of stuff in it. And yeah, to be fair, I was pretty busy, so it's probably like a day. It sounded like that for a day, probably. You know, like I might have bumped it the night before, and the next night went out there to check on them, and they're all gas spent to surface. The solution was just to clean the floor, open the door for ages, air it all out, and then the fish came right. So bizarre.
Yeah,
probably polluted air. Like if you spray chemicals around or something like that, your air pump's going to draw it in and push it through into your tank. So it was probably a similar principle to that.
You weirdo.
Before we started recording, Cam and I were talking about his mouse problem, and I was like saying, "Oh yeah, just chuck some bait down and it'll be fine." But Cam said he hadn't because of the danger of it getting in tanks, and I was like, "Oh yeah, don't worry, it'll be fine. Like, as long as you don't drop bait in the tanks, they'll be fine." But maybe don't do what I said, Cam. That is.
I wasn't planning on
that.
That
is really surprising. Yeah, good.
You'd think that will be fine, but I mean, if the mice go and poop in the tank after they've eaten it, it'll die in the tank. I don't know, but they're going to die in
That's my theory. So, because the poison works
for the water.
All poison works, they go towards water. They dehydrate, to my understanding, they dehydrate themselves. Fish tanks have got water in them, so if they're trying to gasp for life, and they somehow make their way into a fish tank, then that's not ideal.
You got to make sure you have very tight-fitting lids.
What's that, sorry?
You can put the bait out, then water next to it, can't you?
Well, that defeats the purpose of having the bait. Because they're going to find the water and then they're going to
still die.
They're still going to get died.
No, I'm pretty sure they still die, even if they can't get water.
They still die.
It's just they get real thirsty and then try to find water, but then die.
Yeah, that's what Ryan said. Put some water beside the bait, so they'll get real thirsty, find the water, and then that might depoisonize the poison.
No, it won't.
I don't think so. Because we used to have a creek by my house and we used to poison them all, and they'd obviously be able to find a creek, but they'd still be able to not die.
Alternatively, I've just got traps.
Yeah, traps are
fair enough. I was saying it's a shame we can't get those big monitor lizards that would hunt them. That'd be funny. Fun.
What about a water dragon? Can a water dragon hunt them?
Don't think so. I don't think they're big enough, are they? I don't know anything about reptiles. I know a bit about turtles and tortoises, but that's about it. So, if you guys need any advice on how to kill rats and mice, you've come to the right place, eh? Who would have thunk it?
Yep, we're away.
So yeah, exactly. My first major story is, I don't know if this is more hobby related or more like on the business side or whatever, but Cam and Ryan already know about this very well. But when I first started the shop, like two and a half years ago, or whatever it was, I bought a whole lot of tanks. Like, I kitted the shop out with tanks, and I kind of rushed into it a little bit. Well, I don't really know. Like, we're not going to get into the why, because I don't even know really. But
Also important to note that some people maybe were also saying, "Oh, I don't know if this is such a good idea." Does it sound like it doesn't?
I don't recall
sound
that.
like. Just make sure you check it all out. Make sure it's not too good to be true.
Well, no,
Make sure that
I can't. I have something to say in response to that I can't say because I don't want to give away the identity of the individual who I bought the tanks off. But once we get over this, that's not subtle at all. Once we get off this call, I'm gonna tell you a story. But basically, the tanks all ended up leaking, and I can't remember how many it was off the top of my head, but I had like 6 or 8 or no, it would have been more than that. It would have been like 12 or 15 of the tanks leak in the shop. I had one 3-foot tank completely let go, but then the rest was like the smaller tanks let go half. It's annoying, but didn't ruin the floor as much. So yeah, that was not my ideal situation of aquariums. They ideally want them to hold water.
They all got sent back and resealed and then leaked again, didn't they?
Not all of them, but a lot of them did, and then kept leaking. And then I tried to reseal some, and then they leaked because I'm not very good at that whole thing. And then ended up, I just gave them all to Ryan to use as spare glass, and now they're all in this fish room / at the tip. So
did they give you a reason as to why they might have been leaking? Was there any thoughts around that?
You're such a little shit stirrer, man. You know, the reason that was given is because I have a van.
An old van.
And yeah, well, it's not even that old, but like an older van. And it was said to me that I required one of those glass carrying vans. Which has like those I don't know what they're called, but like this little frame on the side of them to carry glass. Yeah, whatever Cam just said that I don't understand. But apparently I was supposed to have one of those, which doesn't even make sense because how would you put a fish tank on that?
Lead a fish tank up against that, and how is it going to contribute towards the tank leaking?
And I mean, and what was the other thing? Oh, and because there was carpet on the floor of my van, like not the floor, like the back, where you put the stuff. There's carpet there.
Like shag pile,
Yeah. So that was the reason that was given, which obviously is not factual, given pretty much I'm moving tanks around every day and never have had one leak in that van aside from like, what was it? Like, most of those ones.
You got off them. Yeah.
Pretty much. So yeah, that was not ideal. But people will ask. I'm not going to go into the whole like legal side of it because like no one cares. No one wants to know. We're here to talk about fish. So yeah, I didn't actually. I lost. What was it? I lost. I think it was like 12 celibus half beaks and 2 guppies and 1 platy, and that was all I lost from those issues. Even in that tank that completely let go, there was the way the substrate was. There was like puddles, and I went in, and there was like blue rams and like what else was in there? Neon dwarf rainbows and stuff like sitting in the puddles. Not super happy, but like I put them in a different tank and they're fine. So yeah, I'm very surprised I didn't lose any more fish. The half beaks was hard. That
yeah, that sucks.
They're very cool fish, very hard to find. But yeah, everything else was a little bit unhappy, but they all lived and they all went to their new homes eventually. And as far as I know, they're still swimming around doing their thing, their fish-related activities. So yeah,
you had a couple of those tanks let go in clients' houses too, didn't you?
Oh yeah, not a couple. There was like quite a lot. It was like customers because I did sell them. But basically, what we did is just like I contacted everyone I knew, but obviously, being customers, sometimes it's just people walks in and grabs one, and I don't know their phone numbers or anything. But everyone I did, some of them I knew because it's like regulars and that. I just got them, those Blue Planet 65-liter ones, because it was like pretty close to those dimensions. So the ones that I sold, pretty close to those dimensions. So I just swapped them out to those, and then I think I just took them to the tip, the old ones. Oh no, I made mealworm colonies that then died because I can't do mealworms, and then I took them to the tip / took them to Ryan's house, and
every time Cam came out, he'd bring out a couple of tanks, and my whole lawn behind my garage just ended up filled with fish tanks, and I was trying to hide them from my missus. And Mrs. walks out and she's like, "What the fuck are all those? You've got so many bloody fish tanks lying around this fucking property. We look like homeless people."
That's like, because they were all at the time. Because where I live now, there's like literally, they would have to go in my bedroom, so like they can't. So I took them to my mum's house, and then there's only so much space there. And then I was like talking to Ryan, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm because that's when you were doing your new tanks. You're like, oh yeah, I need glass." And I was like, "Oh well, boy, do I have a solution for you." And then you just like didn't even get asked anymore. It's just like every time I come by fish, it's like I drop off 20 busted tanks, and then I take home 2 buckets of fish as the space trade, and everyone ended up happy.
Did you propose to your partner as a way of smoothing over the situation, or how's that situation going for you?
That's not a subject that we talk about. She'll hear it. She's in bed right now. So
next time I'm up, I'm gonna be mentioning marriage every 5 seconds in the most obscure ways possible, just to drop the hint.
Yeah, you'll be like, "I propose that we go to the Fishroom, Ryan."
I will. That's actually a good. That's a good option. I was gonna bring. What was I gonna bring? I was gonna bring one of those rings that has lollipops on the end of it.
Yeah. Seems we're engaged in a fishing conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, man. And then you'll be married, and I'll be the best man, and everyone will be happy.
And there'll be fish.
Exactly.
But exactly. The best takeaway out of your story was your fish tank leaking story was, "I told you so," and also I ended up with a whole shitload of glass for free. So I managed to make a bunch of tanks, like 20 tanks out of it. So Yeah. And,
so somehow Ryan came out a winner, but I'm not gonna tell you why it's not an "I told you so." But when we get off the call, I will tell you why you're wrong, basically.
There you go. I've been in a long-term relationship. I know what it's like to be wrong. It's just every day, all the
time. Wait till you're married, eh?
Yeah.
All right.
It's not good there.
Sweet. So, what's your next one, Cam?
So this one involves a lot more death than my first one, which involved none. Significant. So in the first shop that we had a semi-automatic water change system. So turn a tap on, drip line stripped in, pushed it straight out the drain. Good solution. Worked really well. It worked really well unless you forgot to turn it off when you left to go home for the day. So I was doing an automatic water change one day, because what I normally used to do is, in theory, when you're taking a bag out, catching fish, the water level's dropping. So that's when you replace it, that's a water change. So I'd always just make sure the levels were topped up, because if anything hadn't been sold, the water would overflow and then everything just topped up. So I just made sure everything was about par before I walked out, but I forgot to turn the tap off one night. And so I came in the next morning, and the whole shop felt cold, and it had this really weird, eerie feeling to it. And I looked down, and because the water change was connected to both racks, so it was about 40 tanks, and basically every single fish in the 40 tanks were entirely dead, other than a few. Yeah. So
that's not good.
No. So that was about $5,000 worth of fish that went overnight.
Jeez.
That was very, very early days in the business.
When you don't have money to be able to deal with that.
Small business, $5,000 hit's pretty big one, eh? It's not a fun hit. Not a fun hit. Yeah.
So there was a real eerie feeling in me, and everything like the world was crushing in over me. It wasn't very nice, so I basically scrimped and saved and called on my parents and called on anyone that would listen and managed to get some money out of some people to basically start again as far as the fish goes. So we did that. It wasn't that much fun. And then about 6 months later, it happened again, not by my hand. So my staff member at the time pretty much did the same thing.
Damn.
And it was the same thing. It was a bit of a different feeling for me that time because I've been through it before.
You know you can get through.
Well, the biggest thing I'd be thinking right then is I'm an idiot because I didn't put a different system in place there. You know what I mean? You got no one else to blame then.
She took the guilt, but I said to her, "This is my fault because I hadn't changed it." With one mistake is one thing, 2 mistakes that's stupid. Yeah, so I took the hit for that. That was all on me. But subsequently, and unfortunately, that was part of the reason why we closed down the first shop. The lease ran out at about the same time my young fella was born, and we weren't able to fight back from that one. So that's why the first shop that we had the door shut. So yeah, we lost about 10 grams worth of fish in the space of about 6 months from two pretty big mistakes, and that's why we backed off and went online solely. And yeah, that was what happened about 5 years ago.
Damn, because I've got a very similar system. Mine doesn't do a section. It just does like all the big tanks are all on overflows, and then just put the hose in. And if you don't put the hose in all the way, like if you don't turn it on all the way, you turn it on like maybe a quarter, and the water kind of like dribbles out, and then it overflows at the same rate. And so I can just leave it for like an hour, and it'll be fine. But there is multiple times where I've just left it going overnight because I completely forgot. And I've not had fish death from it, but holy hell, I guess I need to be way more careful. Because
you just go by a garden timer. Put a garden timer in line, and then you just turn the knob around to like half an hour or whatever, and that's all you need to do.
Yeah, I didn't because obviously I've done it before and nothing bad has happened. So I'm like, oh yeah, sweet. But evidently, if it's possible that fish died, then holy hell, I have got lucky somehow when I need to do something.
And
I wouldn't be risking that.
I've done the same thing on my fish room. Just left the hose running overnight and killed all my female lemon jakes, which sucked.
Oh god, that's horrible.
But I'm always dubious on those timers are going to malfunction. Like, I know it's probably unlikely, but even light timers given up on me, and I'm sort of working on the same. They work on the same principle, so I've always been a bit dubious that those water timers will just give up and it just keeps running overnight anyway.
Or what you do then is you have what I'd do is have the tap. So you got to turn the tap on, you got to turn the timer on, and then I'd have sitting next to it, get it off AliExpress or something, some bloody 30-minute timer or something that you push a button, and then in 30 minutes it makes a really horrible, horrendous noise, and then you go, oh, I forgot to turn that off, and then you go turn it off. So you put
just get one of those. Why don't you just do just set an alarm on your phone every time you do it?
But I think if you mount something to the wall right next to it, where you push a button every time you do it, it's really easy, and
The problem with that, is that if you're in the middle of doing something or you're busy and you just turn the alarm off and keep going, dealing with a customer or something like that. So those Rainbird systems look pretty intense, and I haven't seen too many people say they had failures with them. So that might be where I go out with it.
The water change system in my fish room, after learning from yours and other mistakes that I've made, is a garden irrigation system, and it uses solenoids. Now I was always worried about the solenoids failing, but it's got two. It's got a master solenoid to let the water in, and then one for each bank. So there's actually two solenoids that have got to operate to make the water come out. So obviously that's just two layers there of failure, and they're also powered on. So if the electronics fail, it's going to not fail on. It's just going to die and not put anything out. So that was what I've done to mitigate that in the fish room, And that's been in a couple of years now. I probably need to test it all again, and then maybe just throw the solenoids out, put some new ones in.
Or just send them down to Cam.
I wouldn't know what to do with it though. That's the problem. I'd have to pay for someone to get it installed for me.
Pay for Ryan to install it.
Plug it
Could
in.
do that.
Problem solved, eh?
Yeah, I heard you got some tanks that need making down there, eh?
Sadly, yep.
Yeah.
Master tank builder right here, 2.0.
I hate making tanks. Anyway.
So what's your next one, Ryan?
My next one is along the lines of your rat poison and the bear poisoning and all that sort of stuff. I had this big, massive 6-foot tank in my lounge when I lived in Ranui, which was a cool place. Another story for another day. And it was a real cool tank full of Africans and stuff. But if I didn't do a water change for like a week, fish just started randomly dying, and they would just die, and it was like they were being poisoned just one at a time. So slowly but surely over the period of like a year, the fish were just dwindling down and down and down and down. And whenever I did a water change, it was all good for a little while, and then they just kept dying off one by one by one. We initially thought it was like the eco mist bloody fly sprays the poison in the air thingies. But I've always used them around fish tanks and never had any issues. Like never been a drama at all for me. And so we moved that, we turned that off and stuff, and then all of a sudden, always they would just die and die and die. And it took me, it was years, and I just never figured out what it was. So it wasn't until I sold the house and I was emptying the tank and I couldn't take it, so I was selling it to a mate, and I was pulling the substrate out, and then I was like, oh shit. The substrate, we had a pool at the time at the house, and the pool filter sand had got old and I'd replaced it. So I thought I'd rinse out the pool filter sand and use it for substrate in the tank. So obviously I rinsed the shit out of it and soaked it and stuff, and it was really old and it hadn't had any chlorine or anything in it that I'd used, and I thought that sand was inert, like it wouldn't soak anything in. But my strongest theory was the sand was obviously porous and had soaked in chlorine or chemicals or whatever, and then after a period of time it would build up to a level where it would dissolve into the tank, to a level where it was harmful, and the fish would die. You'd do a water change, you'd dilute that back down, and it would take time to build back up again. So I think that was what the problem was. It was just slowly leaching out and poisoning them. But I was so fixated on everything else that I couldn't see the fucking obvious thing of the substrate staring right back at me. I could have siphoned all that out and started again with the substrate or no substrate, and it probably would have been, years ago, would have saved all those fish. But I couldn't see it and I couldn't understand it, and it was just really, really interesting for me to go, that was so obvious, but I couldn't. Just down in the weeds and couldn't see it. So you always think twice about everything that you stick in a fish tank. And obviously in hindsight, it was stupid to use pool filter sand, because even though it appears like they're solid beads, they're actually porous. That's how they work. So they soak in shit and you can't get it out. There may have been a way to neutralize that. Maybe if I thought it was chlorine, I could have primed the crap out of it or something. I don't know, but it's just not worth it for the sake of just buying new stuff.
And I mean, sand's not expensive anyway.
No, I just
buy
had
brand
it.
New, so
I had it, and it was real cool. It looked really cool too. It was like a nice, natural looking substrate. So I should have just thrown it in the garden and not used it.
Damn, that is not ideal. That's one of those ones where it's like, so obvious to look back, but I can definitely imagine just not even having it not even come up on the radar as you're in the moment.
It didn't. No, not. And like I said, this wasn't a short period of time either.
Why would the substrate be doing this? It can't be that. It wouldn't even be in the mindset.
I didn't even think it at all. So, bizarre. And pool filter sand is 100% fine to use as a fish tank substrate. Just don't use stuff that's been used.
Not secondhand stuff.
A pool filter. If you can't control or don't know where it's come from or what it's been used for, probably don't stick it in your fish tank.
Yeah, no, that definitely is a tough lesson, but I suppose it's better to know than not to know,
Yeah.
So yeah, damn. Yeah, but that sounds like a pretty cool tank. Nice big 6-foot display tank. Can't go wrong, can you?
It's now my mate's lounge planted tank.
Oh, that sounds boring.
Yeah.
Probably filled with plecos, eh?
Nah, he's got bristle noses in there.
Oh, nice. Oh, at least you might see them every now and then, eh?
A big old red-tailed shark as well that I had.
Oh, is that same one you mentioned last week or the week before or whatever it was?
He was living his best life, boss of that tank.
Oh, good to hear it, eh?
Yeah.
Must be happy.
Definitely.
So yeah. Oh, well, I'll my next one is so I've got two that I'm trying to decide which one to do, but I've decided. I'll do the other one if I've got time on the end. So basically, like probably maybe like a year and a half ago, maybe even a little bit longer, I had this issues which we've kind of touched on in a previous podcast, but I don't know, probably not a lot of people knows. But like for my big tank in the shop with the arowana and like Oscars and plecos and stuff like that, common plecos, the cool kind. I had a bunch of driftwood in it. Like I don't know how much, how to quantify how much, but like a lot. And basically in my area, well, like the area where the shop is, there's basically no KH out the tap. It's like non-existent. And so with all this driftwood, I had like a real big pH crash, and then the ammonia got up a little bit, and all this kind of non-good stuff. So basically, what that then caused is all the other fish were fine, like the Oscars and stuff were happy as more or less. They're pretty bulletproof, except the arowana didn't enjoy it, shall we say? And so then she ended up getting, it was off the top of my head, it was like liver, something wrong with her liver, like an infection, like a bacterial infection. And she ended up like getting like pine coning and all this kind of thing, like real bad. And then, so yeah, what I did about it was I obviously took out all the driftwood, did heaps of water changes and rode that out. And then in the end, it took it to the vet and got some super, I can't remember what it was called, but like some super strong antibiotics that had to be injected into like, if you imagine like the side of the fish and then like divide it into thirds, it's like where like the line of the top third would be. So because she had broken off a scale in the net taking her to the vet, luckily in that area. So the needle had to get slid between those two scales into the muscle and injected, and then did that for like, I can't remember what it was, like maybe 2 months or something. And she came right and she's fine now. But yeah, that was what happened, which was it was a dumb thing on my part. But yeah, that was not an enjoyable time. So yeah.
Also along the lines of my thing, just chucking stuff in a tank and not actually.
Yeah. There's really more to consider than what you'd think, you know. Yeah, like because I obviously had driftwood lots of times, and had even had those pH crashes on a lower scale on smaller tanks and stuff with heaps of driftwood. But yeah, it didn't even clock because it's like so much water volume in that big tank. It's like it'll be fine. And like there's still driftwood in there now, and like because it's so much water, nothing ever happens. Like the pH would go like to 6.8 at the lowest, the morning before a water change, and it wouldn't go any lower than that because it's so much water, it just like dilutes it all down so much. But I suppose it's just like some critical mass number gets hit or whatever, where it can do its chemical thing. So yeah,
Fish
that's
can
pretty
handle a
buzzy.
lot,
But like we had
only
to.
handle so much,
but what was really cool about this whole thing though was you managed to take the fish to the vet, get it X-rayed, get
Yeah, I
blood
got some
tests
X-rays,
done,
which is pretty buzzy.
get blood
Yeah,
tests done, and the vet actually consulted with experts around the world, didn't they, to get like a
yeah.
proper diagnosis and stuff.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's
'Cause, like, he was
that's
telling
actually
me.
pretty cool.
Yeah, because he was telling me, he's like, because there's obviously he's not like a fish expert, like he knows what he's doing, but he was more into like birds and stuff. So what he was telling me is like there's this network for like on the computer, there's like this network where all the vets, it's kind of like a closed forum type of thing where you can like go on if you're a vet and like contact or like put up things and like they all can have their input and stuff. And like somehow he got in contact with like it was like a big arowana, a vet who worked on one of the farms in Malaysia, I think it was, and then was getting like advice from them, and then someone else from the UK, like a fish specialist from the UK, and they were doing all that, and then yeah, we got gill scrapings and fecal samples and blood tests and X-rays and all this kind of, vet activities basically, and they were able to figure out what was wrong, and then prescribe the correct medication to deal with that specific problem. So yeah, that's the only time I've ever encountered something coming back from pine coning. So yeah, that was pretty crazy.
Makes you
Yeah, and
wonder
that's
how often fish can be saved with some intervention. But like,
Yeah,
because it's just a $5 guppy, for example, no one seems to care too much.
yeah, exactly. And I think
And you
it
can
probably
get
would
that
be
'cause
hard because
you can't spend that sort of money on a $5 guppy every time it gets sick.
yeah,
You know,
I mean, it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't expensive, if that makes sense. Like,
For the
it was
sake of your
way,
pet, not the end of the world.
yeah.
It's fine.
Like, obviously, it's like anytime you go to a vet, it's not cheap, but it was a lot cheaper than like I would have assumed it would have been to do that before, like beforehand. Like, I'm not going to speculate on the cost because, to be honest, it was too long ago. I don't remember. But if anyone is interested, they can let me know and I can look it up. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. And I mean, because the hard part as well with like, for example, if it was a betta, it was like, because this had to be injected, obviously, it's a big fish. It makes it a lot easier compared to like a tiny little betta.
Yeah.
Like, I have no idea
Also,
if it's doable or not, but ask the vet.
when I've sent fish away to be chopped up and analysed, they have commented, even though they were big African cichlids, that they were too small.
Yeah,
They struggle by the size of fishes, and they chop it up and get to the organs. They're tiny, so they can't actually clinically.
when you
have a lot
compare it to like
work
a
with.
cat or a dog or something.
Yeah. So it's hard for them to see what they need to see, or X-ray and neon tetra, and you're probably not going to be able to see a lot.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah. It's like, because obviously
So,
that the air1 is closer to like that cat or dog size. Like, it's probably similar size to a small cat or dog, where it's more like the machines are more able, like designed to be able to see that. Like, I'm sure you could X-ray neon tetra, but like I doubt anyone's got that machine kicking around, and if they do, it'll be expensive
Not
as all hell.
anymore.
But yeah,
yeah. Okay.
but yeah.
But
So
that's
that was
cool.
kind of
That's actually a cool mistake with a good ending, though. So we like that.
yeah.
Happy,
It ended out
happy
well,
endings,
but
happy endings all round.
Everyone loves happy
Yep.
ending.
Yep. So yeah, do you have any more stories, Cam?
I got plenty now that we've been talking about it. We've got time for another round.
Yeah, I reckon.
Yeah.
So
Not a super in-depth round, but another go round.
cool. So this is another tank failure on my behalf. You guys remember? Oh, you might not, Cam, because you're young and you technological type of person. But do you remember metal halide lights, Ryan?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do.
So
Punk.
a friend of mine made an aquarium. It was quite a big one, about 1,300 litres. So off the top of my head, it was 6 foot long by about 3 or maybe 4 foot deep and 2 or 3 foot high. So it was quite a chunky tank. He moved house, so he gave it to me with all the fish. So it came with Jags, Texas, Oscars, maybe Red Devil, that kind of stuff. So that was cool. The only light that I had was a metal halide light. And because I was being lazy and I couldn't be bothered hanging it because DIY is not my best of friend, I just put the metal halide lights directly on the braces.
Oh,
Anyone that knows metal halide lights know they get really, really hot. So the heat of the halides cracked one of the braces. Dropped the light into the water. It's like, So turned the light off, destroyed the light. Brace was cracked. Tank was fine. Didn't think anything of it. Moved on with life. No big deal. Leave it like that. It should be right. Still holding water. Came in one morning and the entire front panel had completely blown out. There was a crack from where the brace had broken, and there was a whole big chunk of glass that had just been pushed across the other side of the room from the pressure of the tank. And
Jesus.
There was like 1,300 litres of water on the ground. It was just a hole in the front panel, exactly where the bracing was. So that was a lesson to me that, braces are important, and if you've got a brace on a big tank, it's there for a reason. And if you break them by doing something stupid like putting metal halide light on it, fix them really quickly because something bad will happen.
Damn, that's lucky there was no one like standing there or anything. That could have, ended very poorly.
Yeah, it happened overnight, and I was like, wow, if I'd been in my fish room and that had blown out, I might not have a leg right now.
Yeah, man, that's crazy.
Yeah. So that was a living moon moment. Braces are there for a reason.
So don't do that.
Yeah. If a tank comes with a brace, it needs a brace.
Yeah.
And it would have been, it's one of those ones where you can look back and say whatever, but you could have just got a bit of timber and stuck a couple of bits of timber in, chucked it on there, and it would have been fine until you put some glass on. But it's just the pressure. I
don't like DIY, so I didn't want to do it.
And people really underestimate the pressure that's inside these tanks, because
100%.
Like I see fish tanks for sale all the time on Trade Me and Facebook that are like the glass is too thin. Like there's actually mathematical formulas that you can go into that tell you what the safety factor of the tank is. And a lot of these
there's
tanks,
even like you can just go online and there's just like calculators that'll work it out for you. You don't even have to do any maths.
And this size by this size, this thickness.
And basically, a safety factor of 1 means that the tank is, only just safe enough in the perfect world to fill. But obviously, we don't live in a perfect world. The glass isn't perfect. The environment's not perfect. The stand's not flat. People are going to whack it. It's going to move. You know what I mean? So you aim for a safety factor of 3. And some of these tanks have very low safety factors. And people, and often bigger tanks too. And people just don't realise. Like I've seen it too, where. Not personally, but I've seen photos of it where a piece of glass has gone through both sides of a 10 mil tank on the other side of a fish room and embedded itself in the wall. Like there would have been a projectile. So
it's like getting shot.
Oh yeah, but worse because it's massive. Like it'll tear a hole through.
Yeah,
it went through both sides of a 10 mil glass tank. Like it's just
the thing that gets me is when people use like safety glass, but it's 5-on-5. Double glazed glass. It means I've got 10 mil glass. No, it means you've got one piece of 5 mil that's as strong as 5 mil. You've got another piece of 5 mil that's as strong as 5 mil. When that one pops, that one's coming with it.
Laminated glass, safety glass.
Or laminate, yeah.
I haven't actually. I've seen a lot of stuff online that a lot of people use toughened glass for fish tanks. And I don't know. I haven't actually got to the bottom of whether it's good or bad yet. But yeah.
It's Americans. I've seen it's always it's a real big thing in America, I think, because I've seen especially on the bases they use it. Like a lot of times you see online, like it's the base is made out of it, and then the sides and stuff isn't. And I'm not 100% sure what's going on there, but it seems dodgy as hell to me. But I'm not an expert.
Especially when you hit the side of it. It's cool.
Because it's already bearing that pressure.
I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. But apparently, it is actually acceptable in industry practice in some places or some tanks.
The only positive is like if it's your front glass and you've got a kid that's swinging stuff around or throwing something at it, it's not gonna break thin, but it still opens up the edges
And if you kept it, if you had it completely kept in, it would be okay. Don't know.
It doesn't make sense to me either.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you have any?
That's my story.
Do you have any more stories for us, Ryan?
Many stories, many mistakes. But I lost entire fish rooms. Although one of them I lost because there was a tornado. I don't know if that was a mistake. Like I got literally locked out of my own house for 7 days and wasn't allowed in.
You should be able to control that tornado. How dare you?
Yeah. But the one that I lost the fish room most recently was probably 5-6 years ago maybe. I do heated fish rooms, so I just put a heater in there and heat the room and insulate it to heat tanks. And I needed a heater, so I went to the warehouse and bought a cheap fan heater, and then just used the thermostat on the heater to try and set it, and it just stuck on and cooked all the fish. You know, like so,
yeah.
Was it Gevo brand by any chance?
Warehouse $10 space heater, fan heater.
Probably made in the same factory.
Yeah, Gevo heaters are terrible, aren't they? We'll get into that later. But now, like all this stuff we're talking about, I run an external proper thermostat on that heater. So I still use the same heaters, but I've put another thermostat in there so that thermostat works, and the thermostat on the heater has to work for it to turn on. Rather have it go cold than go
Chances of both of them going wrong is so low.
And I use an Inkbird, which is a really good option because they fail off. They've got 2 relays that have to turn on to turn them on.
One of these ones?
There you go.
Oh, nice.
There you go. Yeah. So I actually jam the probes into a tank, and the room, the heater heats until that tank gets to a certain temperature. So that's what I do. At the moment, it's still turned off because it's still really warm, so I don't worry about it. But
I find it really interesting. Like, obviously, no hate to you, but I find it really interesting. We all spend so much money on like our fish and like our tanks and all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then try cut corners with things like that. Like, like you were joking about those Gevo heaters before, which, in case you're not aware, listeners, they're like very cheap, but like they're cheap for a reason. Like pretty much every time you see on Facebook someone has lost a tank to being cooked, it's like I would put money on it being a Gevo heater and like stuff like that.
I worked at a pet shop, and the amount of Gevo heaters that came back from either cooking fish or not turning on was insane. And that was my first take of when starting the business. I'm never ever going to deal with them.
Yeah, it's like insane. It's like we spend so much money, but like the equipment, like you see it all the time with filters and that. Like people want to spend as much money. Like they'll buy a fish for $150, no problem. But it comes to like a canister filter, for example, and you want the cheapest of the cheap. And like I get it, but I reckon it'll be so much better off buying like a real decent like canister, like real flash heater, or like an Inkbird or whatever, and then buying maybe some cheaper fish, or just not buying those fish yet and like saving up or whatever. But like I just find it real interesting, that kind of dichotomy of like how much we spend but then don't want to spend in a different place that is arguably more important.
Yeah, and I've been through all that too, and I do struggle with that myself. So that's why now I'm like,
100%.
You've got
Everyone has
$20,000 worth of fish. Spend some fucking money on the life support system. You know what I mean? Because if it goes wrong, they're all dead. So, and all my tanks now with heaters have Inkbirds. They're $60 or something. So why would you not have an Inkbird on there? It's just absolutely stupid.
It's a super interesting kind of problem we run into there, and it's like it's one where like everyone kind of agrees. Like everyone wants to buy the cheapest thing. Like I do it all the time, and I'm like, what am I doing?
And it doesn't mean that
the upside is so low.
It doesn't mean that all cheap things are bad either.
Correct.
There are some good value. Filtration, for example, you can do filtration well cheap. You know what I mean?
Aqua One heaters are another option.
Heaters,
Aqua One
probably can't do well cheap. Aqua One's good value, not the cheapest on the market, but they're good value and they're fairly reliable. Again, I'd probably still recommend an Inkbird.
I
Yeah,
recommend an Inkbird for anything because it's like a heaters are the one thing. It's like the technology seems like it's from the 80s. Like it just
it's just
doesn't.
a thing that
Heaters
bends
are
and
crazy
and
to me.
turns them on and off, and it's just going to weld itself on. That's all it's going to do because current's flowing through it. It's just going to weld on. You know.
Seems like someone needs to invent something better, but
Well, they have Inkbirds.
I'm not. Well, no, like okay, funny guy. You know what I mean? A better way of heating a tank in general. I mean, but.
Well, the heater itself's fine. It's just the thermostat that I think's a bit rubbish.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, but again, I've had
even like
ones
glass
go for years and years and years that are fine. You know.
Yeah, but I mean, even like a glass heater seems like a bad idea. But I don't know.
Well,
who am I to judge?
You can get stainless ones. I guess the problem is, and we talked about it already on this thing, is everyone wants the cheapest thing. You know. So if Jibo's pumping out 100 billion heaters a year and they're selling, they're still going to keep pumping out 100 billion heaters a year, you know. And I went through it with Jibos too when I had probably a 30 tank fish room all heated with Jibo heaters, and it was literally every other week I'd be taking a Jibo heater back. And once I got that far in, even 30 heaters was a significant investment, even the cheap ones. I kept flogging that dead horse for so long with these bloody Jibo heaters cooking fish, not turning on, and I was just a constant trip back to Wet Pets in Palmerston North, just changing all my heaters out, you know. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. Just throw them all in the bin and start again.
Yeah. It's not even like I said, it's not even like having to get like super fancy ones, but I just mean like decent stuff. Like just not like $2 shop crap.
I'll tell you what was a really good heater that they've just not bringing in anymore was the Fluval ones. The E series with the black plastic on them.
Oh yeah.
They
were never used them.
They were good.
They had a digital display on them, didn't they? Is that right?
Digital display. If the water was cold, it was blue. Hot, it was red. Not enough water flow going around, it would tell you, and you could just flick a thing to turn up and down. They were
that's awesome.
really good. They're great heaters. Never had an issue with them.
It's such a shame about we're going to talk about it in another episode, but I reckon it's such a shame with Fluval in New Zealand, if you know what I mean.
And they had another one, which I think with glass, which was bloody brilliant as well, but they just stopped doing it, bastards.
Well, we're going to talk about why in another episode, Cam, so take a breath. Maybe we can do that next week if you want to hear. But yeah, I will just quickly... I have my other story that I mentioned before is just a quick little one. That was more. It wasn't really a mistake. It was more just like an annoyance rather than anything. But like maybe like a year ago or so, I got this massive, well, like not massive, but like real good size, real beautiful black Calvis. It was like probably like 12 centimeters or something, maybe a little bit bigger. But I asked Ryan whether it was a good idea to put it with my electric yellows and stuff, or yellow labs, and I was assured it was a good idea. So obviously, listening to Cichlid Daddy as I do, I chucked it in, and then maybe like 3 days later, its jaw got popped out, like how the Lamprologus have like real delicate jaws. Got a dislocated jaw, tried to put it back, but it wouldn't go back. And so, yeah, that sucked. That real nice fish just had a busted jaw. Well, still has. It's still alive and kicking, just with its busted jaw. So, thanks, Ryan. But yeah,
that has nothing to do with putting it with yellows. That happens anyway. Just happens randomly.
But they were but it was because they were fighting and lip locking. That's why it had like that particular episode, that particular fish happened. But yes, I agree. It is
lip locked with anything.
Yeah, well, I could have put him by. I should have put him by himself or something.
That's a shitty life for him. He wants some yellows to fight with.
Put him with a bunch of guppies or something. You can pick them off and be happy and fat. But yeah, it was that was pretty gutting, and he's fine. Like he's still happy, still eats and everything. Just is an annoyance of a dumb thing I did that, I shouldn't have. So yeah.
I don't really know if you did a dumb thing there, to be fair.
Well, I don't know. I feel like I did a dumb thing. I blame myself.
Nah, I've kept them with those fish before plenty of times and never had an issue.
I know. Every time I go in, I see all your black calvers with, I can't remember, some kind of big burner, like
they're just chilling.
isn't it? There was some kind of metric climber or whatever, and
I've got them with the Lycoma at the moment, and they're with the peacocks, and all sorts. They've been
fine for like what, a year, and then my one lasted like 3 days before he bloody injured himself. Not a happy camper.
I don't even know there was one in there.
Oh, he's not in there anymore. I gave him to Nelly. He's hanging out with a bunch of fronts now.
That's
happy
good.
as. He just does his thing, digs his little holes and eats his food, happy as. But the Malawis didn't go swimmingly, shall we say? So yeah, cool. I don't know if we have any more. Anyone has any more stories?
I've got many, but I think we're running out of time.
Yeah, agree. I got more written down, but I think we're out of time. Fair
enough. I see Ryan just messaged in the chat asking what the topic is for next week, which we haven't decided. So I'm thinking maybe I have a suggestion for you guys. I don't know. I would like to talk about the industry problems. Potentially the fluval situation and some other things that I won't say because that'll be spoiler alert. But I don't know if you guys are down, but that's my recommendation.
We might need to start early, or Ryan might need to take the day off because that one might run for about 5 hours.
Well, maybe it can be a part one.
We'll paraphrase it.
We'll do maybe that's something we can touch on frequently because obviously we got a unique position to know about some stuff.
I do feel like the problems in the industry are very simple. There's a lot of them, but they do boil down to a couple of key factors, is what I feel. But anyway,
So maybe it's something we can spend an hour talking about it, and then everything will be solved, and everyone will go about their life happy as.
Okay, we can roll with
that. We knew it was that simple. So that's our plan for next week. So that's a little insight behind the scenes of how we decide our topics. Is usually it's on Messenger, and I say something, then Cam says, let's not do that. And then Ryan comes in as judge, jury, and executioner and, decides for us. So, yeah.
I quote some NWA lyrics and then we're away.
Yeah, pretty much. Everyone knows what lyrics we're talking about, but we're not going to say that because that'll get us demonetized or cancelled or something.
Demonetized. It's likely we're going to make money out of this.
Oh yeah, we're not monetized in the first place, but maybe in 10 years they'll go back and monetize this video.
Man, we're still trying to get that KFC sponsorship.
We're still trying to get our first listener, aren't we?
Nah, man, we got at least two. We got at least two. We got my sister. So, yeah. We got my sister and Ryan's missus. So that's a start.
They have listened.
Oh, at least you can't hear about the marriage thing, eh?
They got bored, and she's probably in bed listening to me anyway. But who knows?
Yeah. All right.
All right, guys. Well, signing off now. Ryan from Auckland, Cichlid God, Cam inbred from Nelson, God of beards, inbreeding and swinger parties, and Cooler Cam, young dumb Cam, God of trying to keep us young and, hassle me about my shiny forehead. So next week we're going to talk about the exciting and it'll probably be a short episode because we're going to talk about the issues with the New Zealand industry. And there aren't that
many. Whatever will we talk about?
It's pretty strong, pretty solid. Get everything we want. Suppliers are awesome. Fish are good. So, yeah.
This is going to get us cancelled. Cam, at least you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. You guys can't talk about your suppliers or you won't have any.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, you'll have to tune in next week and see.
And make sure you ask Cam about the merch. He's got some real sweet T-shirts on the go. Do you need a T-shirt with my shiny forehead on the front of it? Walk around. You'll love it.
All right. See you later, guys.
Catch you later.